Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liberty Bites on the Think Liberty Network. This is Matt McGowan sitting in for William Gadsden. In this episode, I'd like to take a look at an issue that has been a topic of debate among libertarians for as long as there's been a Libertarian Party. And that is there a place for anarchists inside the Libertarian Party? Now, while most of us know that there are a tremendous amount of self-declared anarchists within the party, there's a growing sentiment that, in reality, anarchism is little more than a utopian pipe dream. This view is especially prevalent among the minarchists in the party, who tend to view anarchism as an impossibility due to the fact that in the world as we see it now, government will always exist. And as a result, we should focus our efforts more on reducing and limiting the power of the government by enforcing adherence to the Constitution, a view that is shared even by some self-declared anarchists who, while they claim adherence to the philosophy itself, believe that in practice, preaching anarchism does little more than scare people away from libertarian government. The problem with this viewpoint is that it ignores history completely. And to illustrate that, one only needs to look back at American history, particularly on the issue of slavery, to see just how wrong that is. Now, when this country was founded, slavery was a way of life. It was an ingrained part of society and one that people expected would always exist. Early abolitionists were viewed as little more than utopian dreamers, and even though there were people who shared their ideas, those same people would argue that rather than advocating for a utopian goal which would never happen, abolitionists would be better served trying to contain the spread or limit the practice itself rather than go for a goal which would never happen in their lifetimes. An argument that is nearly identical to the debate that occurs between minarchists and anarchists today. Now, while it is true those early abolitionists did not live to see the end of slavery, one can argue that it was precisely their efforts which led to the piece-by-piece destruction of that terrible institution. Indeed, most historians agree that it was those uncompromising calls for the end of slavery which led to the ban on the importation of slaves into the United States, the first of many dominoes required to fall before abolition and eventual emancipation could become a reality. Now, one of the things that's most important to remember about this example is that that restriction on the slave trade was viewed as a compromise between the proponents of slavery and those who wish to see it wiped from the face of the earth. A compromise that likely never happens if the abolitionists of the day had listened to those who said they shouldn't shoot for such a lofty goal. Now, many people listening are no doubt saying that's a poor example because slavery is wrong, and most people knew it was wrong, and it's easy, or at least easier, for people to back an idea that they feel a moral justification towards. The problem with this kind of thinking is it fails to recognize that this same strategy can be used to advance ideas and causes that run counter to liberty. One only need to take another look at American history, specifically the socialist movements of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, to see just how wrong that thought is. I mean, if you look at the current welfare state, it's hard to imagine that the socialists of that era could even dream that this would be possible today in this country. Yet not only is it possible, many aspects of the welfare state, such as federal control of education, universal health care, and any host of other big government programs that are ingrained in American society today, are actually advocated by many conservatives who, during that era, would have opposed them with all their vigor and might. Something that likely wouldn't be possible without them viewing this as a compromise with the more radical elements of the left. So what is the lesson for libertarians here? Well, it's really pretty simple. Throughout American history, and indeed world history, it's always been the radicals who have moved the needle either towards or away from individual liberty. And the same thing holds true for the Libertarian Party. If we truly want to inspire the American people and the average voter, we're never going to do so by advocating for minor reductions in the tax rate or a slight lessening of our military commitments around the world. Goals that, while they are certainly an improvement on what we have now, ultimately inspire no one. At the end of the day, libertarianism is a radical philosophy, especially when you compare it to what we are given by the Republican and Democratic parties today. And if we truly want to present ourselves as an alternative to that Republican and Democratic Party and their style of governance, then we have to embrace that radicalism. We have to advocate for the radical changes that we all believe in. By today's standards, even the goals of the minarchists are extremely radical. And as history has proven time and time again, if those same minarchists want to realize those goals, the only method in history that has shown success in doing so is by unapologetically advocating for a more radical end goal. And here in the Libertarian Party, the best way to do that is to embrace the radical messaging of our anarchist brothers and sisters. Indeed, the only way either faction can achieve its goals will be by working together. And there's still plenty of time to argue about where the freedom train should stop once we at least get to the next point on the journey. This is Matt McGowan for Liberty Bites on the Think Liberty Network. Thanks for listening.